upward climb in self-injury in every school I went to. Middle school, high school, didn't matter, right? 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And it was starting to worry me because I would have students rolling up their pant legs, opening their shirts, lifting up their arms and showing me on their belly burn marks, cut marks, head banging, all kinds of things. So I went to my director and said, there is nothing out there on self-injury. There are no workshops, there are no trainings, I can't get updated information, and our stuff is 10 years old. And I don't want to do professional developments anymore with 10-year-old information because there is a change, something's changing. So I went to Cornell. Cornell has the largest, the only actual study on non-suicidal self-injury. 17-year study. It's run by Janice Whitlock, who is a developmental scientist, and got some updated information. So everything you hear about today, any of the handouts that I have available for you, it all comes from the Cornell study. So it's all new, it's all current kind of information. Okay. So adolescence, as any of you were in the last training, it was very interesting because Anthony talked about the neurological changes that happen during infancy. And adolescence is a time that's compared to infancy because it is vast neurological changes going on, right? But during infancy, it's like, oh, your digestive system isn't working yet, you're colicky, it's okay, I'll rock you until you sleep. And we have this understanding of this child whose digestive system might not be really fully developed right now, right? And then they might be teething. And we do the same thing. It's okay that I'm up with you all night. You know, I know that tooth's coming in, I can see it, and it's okay. And so during infancy, we give them what they need. During this time, during adolescent stages, it isn't so adorable anymore, right? So they're not really getting that kind of response that they used to get. But nonetheless, vast neurological change going on during this time, right? Only we don't see it the same way. The more complex the external environment is, the more complex the internal network needs to be. We are right now living the longest passage of adolescence ever known. Transitional adolescence goes up to age 25 right now. Because of our external environment, our internal network needs to be that much larger to be able to live that kind of life, right? So before we go, I'm going to do one more, and I'll introduce you to Janice on video. So as humans, we are story-driven. You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. And we see through the lens of our story, right? And our beliefs come from our story. We identify with our story. One thing can happen in this room and we would all have a different perspective on it because we see through the lens of our story. People that self-harm are attached to a pretty negative story. Their story is that their stress is way too big. They're not strong enough, worthy enough, good enough. It's bigger than they are, right? So they have a negative story, and they're most of the time resistant to changing that story because they identify with that story. That's who they believe they are. Now, one thing that has been known to help students that can overcome self-harm besides therapy, because therapy is dialectical, therapy is what really has been known to work well with self-injury. But there have been students that stopped, right? And what they found was it's students that had some type of exposure to a growth mindset. So in other words, maybe there was a teacher, a mentor, somebody in their family that taught them that maybe right now things will work, right? But taught them that your mind can grow, right? So if somebody, if somebody has exposure to that kind of growth mindset, what happens is their behavior doesn't change, but they view it differently. They view it differently, right? And that is what can be helpful. So when we're working with students and we talk about this growth mindset, it's a very, very empowering tool to use, right? And then they can create the idea of changing, right? Of change. Okay, so what Janice is saying is that it is distress, and a lot of experts are coming out saying that self-injury is not a bad thing. It's a giant big red flag to all of us that says, hello, I'm struggling, I can't handle the pain that I feel on the inside. Not in a healthy way, right? So their definition at Cornell is that non-suicidal self-injury defined as the deliberate, direct, and self-inflicted destruction of body tissue resulting in immediate tissue damage for purpose not socially sanctioned and without suicidal intent. So without socially sanctioned takes away piercings and tattoos and things like that, okay? So intent meaning most people that self-harm are self-soothing or trying to regulate themselves. But we don't really know if somebody's suicidal unless we ask, okay? That's the way to know. Most people that self-harm, it's without suicidal intent, and we know that by the methods that they're using. So many reasons why students self-harm, and some of the ones that I've been told are, it distracts me. If I hurt myself physically, I forget about my emotional pain for a while. Is it long? No, but hey, it gives me a break and I'll take it. Some people say it's for control. I can't control anything else in my life, so I'm going to control the way I hurt. Where I hurt, how I hurt, I'll endure the pain, I'll heal the pain, it'll all be under my control. Which is false because self-injury ends up controlling them after a while, but it is a false belief, right? Another thing I've been told is that I don't feel anything. Feelings hurt too much, so I shut them off, and this reminds me I can feel. Now, any of you remember that song from the Goo Goo Dolls, Iris? There's a line in that song that says, I bleed just to know I'm alive, right? That's what that means. And childhood trauma. If somebody has had childhood trauma in their lives, they are more than 3 times as likely to self-harm than anybody else, just because of that fact, right? Because if there's childhood trauma, even if I'm being abused at a young age, or my parents go through a bad divorce, I live in a home of violence, somebody dies that I love, anything like that, I'm bullied severely, who does that young person blame for that? Themselves, exactly. And they don't talk about it. They keep that blame in here. But what tends to happen as time goes on is they don't really like who they are. I must be really bad because my father hits me. Like, what am I doing that's so bad? I don't know, but I must be a really bad person. I know they're breaking up over me. They fight all the time. I know it's because of me. They keep that inside. And after a few years, what builds there is the negative story. The me that's not good enough, the me that's a bad person, the me that makes people react in poor ways, right? So therein goes that negative story. Now, what this study showed, even though those are all the reasons, and there's more, but Cornell says 2 main reasons. One is to regulate emotions. Emotional regulation is the #1 reason our students are self-harming. Emotional regulation. I feel so much emotional pain, it hurts so much, I want to regulate it. I want to feel, right here, level. So what do I do? What do I do that can regulate my emotions like that? Well, I could take a drug, it would do the same thing. It would quickly get into my bloodstream and I would regulate that emotion real fast. Or I could self-harm, right? And it would do the same kind of thing. Now, this emotional pain is real. I mean, emotional pain is very real. And if I had emotional pain, I would be feeling it 24/7. Only nobody would validate it for me. Nobody would say, hey, Laura, you know that stomach ache you had for the past year? Do you still have it? Are you sleeping any better? Nobody would be doing that. I would feel like nobody even acknowledged it. And what do we do with emotional pain? Right? So ask the person next to you how old they were when they first learned that if you're playing outside and you get cut, you fall on a rock, you fall off the swing, whatever, that you go inside so somebody can wash it, get this thing called a Band-Aid. They're really great. Look at Power Rangers, superheroes, Hello Kitty. You peel them off, you stick it on, and you won't get an infection. How old were you when you learned about Band-Aids? All right, so how Great. When I ask students this question, they're unanimous that it's before kindergarten, right? That's it. Kindergarten or below, I knew about. And you know why? Because we're really good at that, aren't we? We are really good at teaching children what to do when they get hurt physically. We're ready for it. We got first aid kits everywhere. I have one in my car, in every bathroom, right? We're ready for that. We're good at it. But now ask the person next to you how old they were when they first felt emotional pain. The kind that hurts on the inside. Someone bullied them, broke their heart, kicked them out of the friend group, couldn't sit at the lunch table, bad divorce, violence in the house, lost your pet, your loved one. Pain on the inside. How old were you when you first felt that? Because we don't have a Band-Aid for it. We don't really talk about what to do with it, right? And so this exercise is really just to remove the stigma behind self-injury. Because the truth is, they don't know what to do with it. Our students don't know what to do with emotional pain. And younger, they're experiencing it. They are. And they have no idea what to do with it, but they don't want to feel it. Okay? And so that's what we see with self-injury. And one of the things I ask students when I do student workshops is, how many of you were ever hurt physically? Where maybe you broke a bone or something like that, and you're watching everybody freaking out, you're the one that's hurt, and you're like unusually calm. Your collarbone could be sticking out of your chest and you're saying, I'm good, I'm all right, I'm really good, right? And usually there are at least 7 to 10 kids in that class that have that experience. They were the ones that were hurt, but they were the ones that were the calmest. And so that happens because when our brain recognizes physical harm, boom, come the healing hormones, right? And there's an overlap in our brain. And so we believe that is also helping our emotional pain. It's relief from our emotional pain, right? And so if that happens and I self-harm and I get that relief, and now the next time life gets out of control, I might think, well, you know what, I tried it once, it did work, it kind of calmed me down. To try just one more time, I'm going to do it one more time. And so I do. And then life gets out of control again, and I think, well, you know what, just one more time. And that can keep going, and soon that's my go-to when life gets out of control. But just like drug use, my body's going to build a tolerance to those levels of endorphins. It will. And after a while, what am I going to have to do to get the same feeling I got the first time? Yeah, I'm going to have to, if cutting is my method, I will have to cut more. If burning is my method, I'm going to have to go from like heating up a paper clip to heating up an Allen key. Or if headbanging, I'm going to have to do it on something harder. Or what else I might do is incorporate another method. So if I'm cutting, now I might start burning, right? So, but I have to increase it in order to get that same feeling. And this is where self-injury becomes very dangerous. Now, Long Island Crisis Center, I didn't even give you a briefing on what we do. We are a 24/7 crisis intervention agency. We have close to 1,000 resources in our database. So all day, every day, we get calls from schools and community centers and churches and hospitals and all kinds of places looking for resources. So one phone number gives you access to about 1,000 resources in our database. But we also answer the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We answer our crisis hotline and drug and alcohol hotlines. We have a lot of students calling us, right? And it's a great resource for them to have. So that is it. When students know resources, it's a huge advantage for them because they're not always in school. And then they feel like, okay, I've got my school, and I feel, okay, I'm in this group here, and then I'm part of the bigger community, and there are people out there that care, right? And with the new mental health mandate, it is connecting students with outside resources because we want them to feel like they're a part of something even bigger, okay? Second reason most people self-harm, social communication. Social communication is like this. I had a student who told me that her dad was taking her 2 brothers away for a sports weekend. And she had self-harmed for almost 2 years. And she said, I didn't know how I was going to tell my mother, but I thought it was time I'd tell somebody else. So I knew I was having dinner with my mom. She self-harmed on her arm. She said, I rolled up both my sleeves and I went down to dinner. And she didn't even ask me what the marks, scars, and bruises were from. And I was so ready to say it. That's someone self-harming for social communication. They want someone to see that pain. They don't know how to tell you they feel it. They don't know how to articulate it. They don't even know what it's from sometimes. So they self-harm in hopes that someone will see how much they're hurting on the inside. That's social communication. Now, if somebody is self-harming for emotional regulation, very different. That becomes something they don't want anyone to know. Because if you say to me, Laura, please don't do that, you're upsetting me, I'm worried about you, you are now a threat to me. I don't want you to come near me because you're trying to take this away and it's the only thing that I know how to regulate my emotions. I don't know what else to do if you take this away from me. And that is the scariest thing in the world because I've identified with a very negative story. My story says, I can't handle this myself. So now to take away my only way of coping is the scariest thing in the world to me right now. Now we had a mom that called the hotline. I got the call. And she said, hi, I'm in therapy already, but I just have to ask you a question. I took my daughter to the ER last night. She self-harms, okay, we're in therapy for it. But last night she cut so deep that I had to bring her to the ER, I couldn't get the bleeding to stop. They said if it was a little bit deeper, she would not have movement in any of the fingers in her hand. And I don't understand this. And these were her words. And I asked her, how could you do something so stupid? And and I said, what did your daughter tell you? And she said, my daughter said the most ridiculous thing. She said, Mom, I didn't know I was cutting that deep. And she said, how could she not know? I mean, why is she lying to me on top of everything else? And I said, I think it's quite possible your daughter was telling you the exact truth. Because when somebody self-harms for a length of time, they're just waiting for that feeling to come, and it's not coming as easy this time. So she's going to go deeper, waiting for that feeling to come. So your daughter was probably telling you the truth, right? And this is what we're seeing. 70% of those who self-injure chronically, which is more than 3 times a month, use multiple methods, right? Now, self-injury can be compulsive, repetitious, but also episodic, right? So I could self-harm in school, and then maybe I don't do it to a point where it gets addictive, and maybe for 20 years I don't do it anymore, because life got better. But then if I'm in a crisis situation, I could revert right back to what I used to do. We have adults calling the hotline, 36, 42 years old, saying, I don't know why I'm cutting, haven't done it in 22 years. What is wrong with me right now? And when we explore, they're in a crisis situation. And they've never learned healthier ways and implemented healthier ways into their life of coping, of regulating emotions. Emotional regulation can be taught. People can learn how to do this. Our students their stress exceeds their ability to cope with it very often, right? And here, 7 to 25%, average 11 years old, right? So younger and younger, and I'm seeing this in middle schools right now. So it can be symptomatic of a larger ailment. It can be something more. We're living in a world where depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, and suicide are at the highest rates they've ever been. So it's not a secret that self-injury, which is another maladaptive method of coping, is going to rise as well. Okay? So we're seeing this rise because of the complexities of everything else that's happening right now. We have more students on medication than ever. We've got 20% affected by a diagnosable mental illness. That's diagnosable. And 42% of those that fit criteria for one mental illness fit the criteria for a co-occurring mental illness. So early intervention is critical in every single thing about self-injury. Now, risk factors, very similar to the risk factors involved in drug use. Right? It's a maladaptive way of regulating emotions. Abuse, trauma, sexual identity. An interesting thing that came out of this study was 42% of females who identify as bisexual self-harm. 42%. That was the highest when it comes to sexual identity, right? Your environment at home. These are people that self-harm. They feel so deeply, and they really need that part of them felt by somebody. So if their environment at home is low in emotional connection or warm, that's a problem with this, right? Emotional sensitivity and that negative thinking pattern. And that negative thinking pattern comes from their story. And if it continues, if that story continues to be written in that way, that negative thinking pattern is how they see everything. Stress begins, right? And the stress can be typical stress that other students are feeling, but for them, what comes out about it is their inability to manage the stress, right? And then the negative thoughts come out. I can't do anything, I'm a failure. And then that goes to, I can't manage this, it's overwhelming, I need comfort, I self-harm, I get short-term relief. And then boom, the cycle of shame begins all over again. And this just perpetuates endless amounts of time. So the pain offset theory is very interesting. This came out of the study too, that there is a neuro overlap in our brain, and that physical pain and emotional pain can feel like the same relief. So if I'm getting relief from my physical pain, it really does satisfy my emotional pain. It gives me that kind of relief that I'm looking for, right? Because of that neural overlap. So those that are more sensitive to physical and emotional pain are going to be more sensitive to the relief from the physical and emotional pain. And contagion factor, right? So if we're going to look at contagion, and which means, a few weeks ago, we had a group of students on Long Island that were all self-harming, and they were using house warming, right? So they were doing it on this app. They were seeing each other. So contagion, we have to look at social media as well. I had a student in a school once, and she was self-harming, and she said to me, every one of my friends self-harm, every one of them. And I said, really? I said, okay, so it sounds like, there's something that's going on in your friend group that's causing a lot of pain. And she said, well, yeah, we just all do it. And then I started exploring, and I said, you have a lot of friends in school? She said, I don't have one friend in this school, not one. I said, oh, it sounds a little bit lonely, right? No, I don't want to be friends with anyone in this school. Okay. So are your friends more in your neighborhood? No, I never leave my house. Oh, okay. So when you talk about your friend group, are they from summer camp? She said, no, they're all from my chat room. Those are my best friends. And so we all self-harm. So when we look at contagion, right, if it's somebody in the school, if it's a group in the school, this is something to look at as well. The chat rooms, the social media sites. And if there is a group self-harming, you want to really get to that as soon as possible. Who is self-harming to regulate emotions? Who is self-harming for social communication? Who's self-harming just to be in the group, right? So the sooner you can get to that, the better. So self-injury and suicide. So it is a lethality risk, self-harm. It doesn't mean the person is suicidal at the time, but it does raise the lethality for suicide down the road. And I was doing this, a self-injury training for juniors, just the other day. And a student said to me, my friend died by suicide, she killed herself. She self-harmed for 1.5 years before she killed herself. I never knew it was that serious of a thing. I didn't know. If I knew that put her at risk for suicide, I probably would have told someone about it. So people don't always know that this is going to raise lethality for several reasons, but one being really key, right? So in order to kill yourself or attempt suicide, a few things need to happen, right? So we have to have a perceived burdensomeness, right? We have to feel like we are a burden. And people that self-harm feel that way. We have to have this thwarted belongingness. We feel like we're not connected to anything, really. And people that self-harm feel that way. Now, we have people that call the hotline, and they could have every single warning sign possible. Like, they could read down the list, check, they have every warning sign. And then at the end, they'll say this, but I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Because they're missing this little piece right here, which is those who are capable of hurting themselves. People that self-harm have that. We already know. we already know that they have the ability to hurt themselves. So many people with the warning signs, they miss this little puzzle piece right in here, and it stops them from attempting. It stops them. They don't know why, they just can't do it. People that self-harm have that piece. And that piece comes from other things too. It comes from exposure, being desensitized to harming, whether it's abuse, could be drug use, prior attempts, which is why when we're looking at lethality assessment for suicide, we want to know were there prior attempts, because that would desensitize as well. So it's best understood for self-regulation, okay? However, it does put that person at a higher risk for suicidal thoughts, raises lethality. Response, I had a good video for this one too. Okay, how we respond is really important, and when I do professional developments with this, and we get to play all the videos, one of the things social workers say is that that first response, when somebody self-harms, how they are responded to, is so critical that they're thinking that maybe they call the parents first and let the parents know before the student, so that they don't tell the parent for the first time in front of the student, because that first response is so difficult. It's shock, it's fear, it's anger, all rolled into one ball, and then here's this person self-harming who feels emotions so deeply, who already knows they're doing the wrong thing, who already feels shameful, disconnected, alone, and hurt on the inside. And the reaction they're getting, they never forget. And people that have self-harmed in the video say that first initial reaction. One girl said, what made it so much better for me was I remember my mom, she got in my bed with me, and she stayed there for most of the night. And I said, Mom, you could go back to your bed. And she said, when you hurt, I hurt. And she said, I'll never forget that. That is what brought me to recovery. So when we can connect on an emotional level with people that self-harm, we've connected, period, because they are feeling very deeply, right? So if we can connect on a feeling level, we've hit a home run there. That's a connection. Another thing with people that self-harm is this ability to feel the way they do is the biggest blessing in the world. Like, it is an incredible, wonderful trait to have, but maybe not when you're 12 or 13, because you don't know how to manage this, because the rest of the students out there, they're not really feeling so deeply. As a matter of fact, most of them make it feel like they don't feel at all. You're not hurting my feelings, guess what? I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care about anything, right? And then there's this person that cares about everything, and they don't know how to manage it. And so that's what we're seeing here. So, using I language, be really, really careful about not using you language, because that can be blaming, and that makes them feel like something wrong with them. Right? Being constructive in the way you speak, making eye contact, calm, comforting tone, reassurance and hope, reframing as being emotionally receptive. When they hear this, when a student who self-harms hears, you are so emotionally receptive, you're so in tune with emotions, that is such an incredible gift to have. But it's kind of hard to manage now, isn't it? They feel like, wait, what? It's good? Like, that's a good thing that I can do this? Really? You think it's good? Because they don't think it's good. And that could start the reframing of their story right then and there. Wait, what? It's good? I can start a good story now? So that is a powerful piece when speaking to somebody who self-harms. And the emphasis is on building a connection and collaboration, not to leave them out of the process. This is their hurt. They understand it better than anybody else. Now, coming from a place of curiosity helps too. And I find that when I work with students, I always come from this place of curiosity, right? So the other day I had a student, and this has happened several times. They'll talk to me about relieving their anxiety with marijuana, right? But you know what? I smoke and I feel better. Like, my anxiety goes away and it works. And I'll say, wow, that's really interesting. Because I know people that have anxiety and they're on medication. So can you help me to understand something? And they're like, yeah, what? What do you want to know? Well, I'm just curious, like if you're really anxious, how much do you smoke? Versus when you're a little bit anxious. Like, do you measure it? Because I know with medication, you're on so many milligrams 2 or 3 times a day, whatever it is. So how do you do that? And they look at me and they go, I don't know, I just smoke till I feel better. I don't know how to figure that out. Oh, okay. Because I know that when people use medication, the idea is to learn self-help strategies, and then you wean off of the medication, and then you get to regulate your emotions by yourself. So what's your plan on weaning off of this and learning self-help strategies? And then I get the look that goes, I don't have a plan. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to feel better. And you can see the wheels turning. Now, I could have very well sat there and said, you think that's going to relieve your anxiety because you know what it does to your transmitters? You are depleting your dopamine. You're going to have to use it more. You're never going to feel that way without the drug again. Blah, blah, blah. I could have done that. But instead, coming from that place of curiosity makes them feel like they want to answer your questions. And then it makes them think. So the importance of educating our peers, I couldn't have felt this more than the other day when that high school junior said, I wish I knew this, because I knew she self-harmed for a long time. So letting them know about self-harm, and that it does raise the risk for suicide down the road, even though that's not how they feel right now most of the time. So friends, frontline, just like suicide, they are the first to know. Followed by parents when it comes to self-harm, because it's kind of harder to hide from them. And right down the road. So educating our peers, peer leader groups, let them be trained, let them know. Because, students hear that people self-harm all the time. They don't know the risks behind it. So recovery is a long hike, but do it anyway. This view from the top is amazing. I took that off of one of the chapters. The one positive thing I saw was this. Somebody who recovered posted on there. And I thought that was amazing, right? So whenever possible, we can use self-injury as an opportunity for growth. Validate the difficulty, the distress, and the stress, but encourage that growth mindset. Right now, there's so much going on in your life, there's so much pain that I get it. How do you feel better? You don't really know how to. But up until now, this was the case. What can we do going forward? Because as students change and grow, we have to increase our methods of coping, right? And you know this as adults. I mean, I used to be a vice president of a bank, right? So at 40 years old, I took a leave, stayed home with my kids, started volunteering, began to see this world in need, in crisis, and I thought, whoa, what the heck was I? I had an office on 48th floor, 270 Park Avenue. I was in my nice little cute bubble. I had great clients. They made a lot of money. I got good gifts, nice parties. And then I see this other world, and I'm like, wow, I can't go back to that, right? So switched up my life and went into what I'm doing now. When I became a crisis counselor, I needed to up my coping. I needed to learn meditation. I needed to be more mindful. I needed to have days of self-care that I never had as a mother, ever, ever. I needed to do that, otherwise I wouldn't be able to help anybody. And all of you are in the same position. So we can't pour from an empty cup. We can't give what we don't have. And so by being here today and in your lives, I hope you practice. And this is why I'm always in a class. I'm always learning something, because the more I learn, the more I can help other people to learn, and that we can best serve our youth. But take care of yourselves. Please take care of yourselves, because we need you. Basically, we really need you. So the video I had from this was awesome too, because I know, I'm so sorry. But I'm just going to quickly tell you, because this is our last slide, but it talked, these women, these young women that had self-harmed are talking about their takeaways. And there was one woman who said, I'm never having a child. There was. But the other three, one's going into education, one's going into being a therapist, and what they pulled away from it was, I became such a better person. I know myself better, I understand emotions better, and I'm going to bring this into everything that I do. And parents are on the video too, saying that they watched their child go from this hurt little person that couldn't talk to becoming this person who wants to change the world, right? Because once you can Go through this. It's the law of polarity, right? It's a universal law. We know there's light because we know dark. We know up because we know down. They knew hurt so deeply that that's how happy they can be, right? So it's that we need to flip that switch for them. So the more we grow and learn, the more we can give. And thank you for being here today. And you might be only one person, but guess what? The biggest protective factor for our students is one trusted adult. We can't control their home life. We can't control past trauma. We can't control environment. We can't even control how they cope. But we can control that. We could be one trusted adult. So I have some information here if anybody wants to take handouts. If anybody does want me to come to the school and do trainings, that's